a WikiVidi documentaries production. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Enjoy. Shooting of Philando Castile. On July 6, 2016, Philando Castile was shot and killed by Geronimo Yanez, a St. Anthony, Minnesota, police officer, after being pulled over in Falcon Heights, a suburb of St. Paul. Castile was in a car with his girlfriend, Diamond Reynolds, and her 4-year-old daughter when he was pulled over by Yanez and another officer. The shooting achieved a high profile from a live-streamed video on Facebook made by Diamond Reynolds in the immediate aftermath of the shooting. It shows her interacting with the armed officer as a mortally injured Castile lies slumped over, moaning slightly, and his left arm and side bloody. The Hennepin County Medical Examiner's Office said he had sustained multiple gunshot wounds and reported that Castile died at 9:37 p.m. CDT in the emergency room of the Hennepin County Medical Center, about 20 minutes after being shot. According to a police dashcam video/audio, after being asked for his license and registration, Castile told the officer he had a firearm, to which the officer replied, "Don't reach for it then." After saying "Don't pull it out" twice, the officer shot at Castile 7 times. Reynolds' testimony was that Castile was shot while reaching for his ID after telling Yanez he was armed. On November 16, 2016, John Choi, the Ramsey County attorney, announced that Yanez was being charged with 3 felonies, 1 count of second-degree manslaughter, and 2 counts of dangerous discharge of a firearm. Choi said, "I would submit that no reasonable officer knowing, seeing, and hearing what Officer Yanez did at the time would have used deadly force under these circumstances." Yanez was acquitted of all charges on June 16, 2017. The same day, the city of St. Anthony said it was offering Officer Yanez a voluntary separation agreement. Victim: Philando Deval Castile was 32 years old at the time of his death. Castile was born in St. Louis, Missouri. He graduated from St. Paul Central High School in 2001 and worked for the St. Paul Public School District from 2002 until his death. Castile began as a nutrition services assistant at Chelsea Heights Elementary School and Arlington High School. He was promoted to nutrition services supervisor at J.J. Hill Montessori Magnet School in August 2014. Prior to the shooting, Castile had been stopped by the police 52 times for traffic violations, some of which resulted in his arrest. Police: Geronimo Yanez was identified by the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension as the officer who shot Castile. The other officer involved in the traffic stop was identified as Joseph Causa, who was described as Yanez's partner. Both officers had been with the St. Anthony Police Department for 4 years at the time of the shooting, and were longtime friends who had graduated together from the Minnesota State University, Mankato Police Academy in 2010. Yanez, of South St. Paul, was 28 years old at the time of the shooting. The St. Anthony Police Department has 23 officers. 8 officers are funded through policing contracts with the cities of Lauderdale and Falcon Heights. In a press briefing at the scene, St. Anthony's interim police chief John Mangseth said that the shooting was the first officer-involved shooting that the department had experienced in at least 30 years. Incident: Castile was pulled over as part of a traffic stop by Yanez and Causa in Falcon Heights, Minnesota, a suburb of St. Paul. Castile and Reynolds were returning from shopping at a grocery store. Earlier that evening, Castile had gone for a haircut, eaten dinner with his sister, and apparently picked up his girlfriend from his apartment in St. Paul. A St. Anthony police officer patrolling Larpenteur Avenue radioed to a nearby squad that he planned to pull over the car and check the IDs of the driver and passenger, saying, "The 2 occupants just look like people that were involved in a robbery. The driver looks more like one of our suspects, just because of the wide-set nose. I couldn't get a good look at the passenger." At 9:04 p.m. CDT, the officer told a nearby officer that he would wait for him to make the stop. The stop took place on Larpenteur Avenue at Fry Street, just outside the Minnesota State Fairgrounds, at about 9:05 p.m. CDT. Riding in a 1997 white Oldsmobile with Castile were his girlfriend, Diamond Reynolds, and her 4-year-old daughter. Castile was the driver, Reynolds was the front seat passenger, and the child was in the back seat. According to investigators, Yanez approached the car from the driver's side, while Causa approached it from the passenger side. The police dashcam video shows that 40 seconds elapsed between when Yanez first started talking to Castile through the car window and when Yanez began shooting at him. According to the dashcam, after Yanez asked for Castile's driver's license and proof of insurance, Castile gave him his proof of insurance card, which Yanez appeared to glance at and tuck in his outer pocket. Castile then calmly informed Yanez, "Sir, I have to tell you that I do have a firearm on me," quoting the Star Tribune description of the next 13 seconds of the audio/video. Before Castile completed the sentence, Yanez interrupted and calmly replied, "Okay," and placed his right hand on the holster of his own holstered weapon. Yanez said, "Okay, don't reach for it, then don't pull it out." Castile responded, "I'm not pulling it out," and Reynolds also said, "He's not pulling it out." Yanez repeated, raising his voice, "Don't pull it out," as he quickly pulled his own gun with his right hand and reached inside the driver's window with his left hand. Reynolds screamed, "No!" Yanez removed his left arm from the car and fired 7 shots in the direction of Castile in rapid succession. Reynolds yelled, "You just killed my boyfriend." Castile moaned and said, "I wasn't reaching for it." Reynolds loudly said, "He wasn't reaching for it." Before she completed her sentence, Yanez again screamed, "Don't pull it out." Reynolds responded, "He wasn't." Yanez yelled, "Don't move. Fuck." Of the 7 shots fired by Yanez at point-blank range, 5 hit Castile and 2 of those hit and pierced his heart. The events that occurred immediately following the shooting were streamed live in a 10-minute video by Reynolds via Facebook. The recording appears to begin seconds after Castile was shot, just after 9 p.m. CDT. The video depicts Castile slumped over, moaning, and moving slightly, with a bloody left arm and side. In the video, Reynolds is speaking with Yanez and explaining what happened. Reynolds stated on the video that Yanez asked him for license and registration. He told him that it was in his wallet, but he had a pistol on him, because he's licensed to carry. Castile did have a license to carry a gun. Reynolds further narrated that the officer said, "Don't move," and as Castile was putting his hands back up, the officer shot him in the arm 4 or 5 times. Reynolds told the officer, "You shot 4 bullets into him, sir. He was just getting his license and registration, sir." Reynolds also said, "Please don't tell me he's dead," while Yanez exclaims, "I told him not to reach for it. I told him to get his hand open." At one point in the video footage, an officer orders Reynolds to get on her knees and the sound of Reynolds being handcuffed can be heard. Reynolds' phone falls onto the ground, but continues recording, and an officer periodically yells, "Fuck." Audio/video from the squad car of Joseph Causa shows Reynolds' daughter telling her, "Mom, please stop cussing and screaming 'cause I don't want you to get shooted." The day following the shooting, Reynolds said that police had treated me like a criminal, like it was my fault. By the afternoon following Castile's death, the video had been viewed nearly 2.5 million times on Facebook. Reynolds, who was detained with Castile during the shooting around 9 p.m. CDT, was taken into custody and questioned at a police station, then released the following morning around 5 a.m. according to police and emergency audio of the aftermath obtained by the Star Tribune. At 9:06 p.m. Causa called in the shooting, reporting, "Shots fired. Larpenter and Fry." The dispatcher answered, "Copy." "You just heard it?" Yanez then screamed, "Code 3, in a tone of voice the newspaper termed audibly panicked. Many officers then rushed to the scene. One officer reports 1 adult female being taken into custody. Driver at gunpoint. Juvenile female, child, is with another officer. We need a couple other squads to block off intersections. Another officer called in. All officers are good. 1 suspect that needs medics." Reynolds said that officers had failed to check Castile for a pulse or to see if he was breathing for several minutes after the shooting, and instead comforted the officer who fired the shots. Yanez statements. In the dashcam audio/video of the incident, Yanez can be heard being questioned by Street Anthony police officer Tressa Sunda within minutes of the shooting, and telling her, Castile was sitting in the car, seat belted. I told him, "Can I see your license?" And then, He told me he had a firearm. I told him not to reach for it, and when he went down to grab, I told him not to reach for it, and then he kept it right there, and I told him to take his hands off of it, and then he had his grip a lot wider than a wallet. And I don't know where the gun was. He didn't tell me where the fucking gun was, and then it was just getting hinky. He was just staring ahead, and then I was getting fucking nervous, and then I told him, I fucking told him to get his fucking hand off his gun. According to the official Minnesota Department of Public Safety's Bureau of Criminal Apprehension transcript of the interview of Yanez and his attorneys Tom Kelly and Robert Fowler, Yanez stated that his justification for the shooting was based on fear for his own life, because he believed that Castile's behavior was abusive toward a young girl passenger in the car. Yanez said, "I thought I was gonna die. And I thought if he has the guts and the audacity to smoke marijuana in front of the 5-year-old girl and risk her lungs and risk her life by giving her second-hand smoke and the front seat passenger doing the same thing, then what care does he give about me?" The victim's previous marijuana use later became a focus of the defense, with a mason jar containing a small amount having been found in the car. According to the local publication City Page's description of the BCA conversation, Yanez could never state definitively that he saw a firearm that day. Yanez uses various terms to suggest the presence of a firearm. Yanez states, "It appeared to me that he was wrapping something around his fingers and almost like if I were to put my hand around my gun. It was dark inside the vehicle." At another point, it seemed like he was pulling out a gun and the barrel just kept coming. "I know he had an object and it was dark. And he was pulling it out with his right hand." He added, "It was, to me, it just looked big and apparent that he's gonna shoot you. He's gonna kill you." However, in his court testimony almost a year later, Yanez was definitive, testified that he was able to see the firearm in Mr. Castile's hand, and was forced to shoot him. However, the gun was still in Castile's pocket when paramedics were preparing to load his fatally wounded body into an ambulance. Death and funeral. The Hennepin County Medical Examiner's Office ruled Castile's death a homicide and said that he had sustained multiple gunshot wounds. The office reported that Castile died at 9:37 p.m. CDT in the emergency room of the Hennepin County Medical Center, about 20 minutes after being shot. On July 14, Castile was buried following a funeral service at the Cathedral of St. Paul, attended by thousands of mourners, diverse in race, gender and age. Brought to you by WikiVidi Documentaries. Would you like to know more?